On this episode of Eat Sleep Drive, it's a 6-month ownership summary of my Scion FRS. I'm going to give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly of what it's like to own this car outside of the honeymoon period. Welcome everyone to another episode of Eat Sleep Drive, and this one is of course about my Scion FRS, and I've had it for nearly 6 months now. So here's the thing about these cars. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of reviews of them on the internet, but there's not a ton that talk about what it's like to own them long term. There's plenty of people who have driven for a day, maybe a week, but 6 months of ownership, I've uncovered some things that I like and don't like, and some surprises and some stuff that I didn't expect. So that's what we're gonna be covering today. And of course, we're gonna start with the driving segment first because that's what this car is all about. So let's take it for a spin and let's dive in. All right, guys, let's talk about some long-term driving impressions of the Scion FRS, BRZ, GT86, whatever. The first, let's just get the annoying stuff out of the way, and then we'll get on to all the good stuff. The annoying stuff is, number one, the throttle mapping. And it sort of relates to what I had to do back there. The throttle mapping on this car is not linear. And I've noticed that on pretty much all modern Subarus. Like my 2015 STI was like that. The newer WRXs that I've driven are like that. When I press the throttle 10%, it's giving me like 40% actual throttle. And that's annoying in a couple areas. Number one, from what I just did back there, coming away from a stop sign or a stop light, just accelerating in first gear, you tend to slip the clutch more than you need to just because you barely breathe on the throttle and it's revving the hell out of the engine. There's no reason in a driver's car that this should not be one-to-one throttle mapping, because not just from the pull away from a stoplight you're slipping the clutch too much, but more so from the fact that in a driver's car, it's so important for me to get the power I'm expecting from the level of pedal travel. So if I'm in the middle of a corner and I touch the throttle to 30%, I need it to give me 30% throttle, not 70. And that's just the fact of the matter. And it's annoying because not only when if I just press the throttle here and I'm just gradually squeezing throttle more and more, I initially get this like surge as I barely touch the throttle because it's clearly mapping more throttle than it should. And then as I keep going, nothing happens. So it makes the car like less fun basically because you push more on the throttle expecting more and you're not getting more. And of course, it's not a fast car, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's a super fast car, so I'm going to be seeing insane numbers when I get deep into the throttle. But the throttle mapping is super annoying in this car, and you could certainly get a tune and tune that out, like get a tuner to give you one-to-one throttle mapping, and you should, and I will with this car eventually when I finally modify it. Now, the other thing that kind of goes along with power and throttle mapping is the torque dip. The torque dip is nothing that you haven't already heard about with these cars, but I genuinely thought I would get used to it or be able to work around it. The torque dip is something that happens, and I'll give you kind of an example right here. I'm at 3,000 RPM, slamming the throttle. Nothing is happening. 4,000, still a little bit more. Now 4,500, now we're going. Okay, so if you look at a dyno graph of this car, there is this weird dip in the torque curve where you are making significantly less torque between like 3 and 4,500 RPM. And it's absolutely maddening because that is where you spend all your time driving this car, right? I thought I would get used to it. I thought I could just, downshift or I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but I thought that would get better as I drove it and I would just get more used to it. But it is just very annoying because all passing on the highway or whatever basically requires a downshift, because otherwise you're just stuck in that range of no power. So it's sort of a bummer. I do really like the shifter. It's pretty notchy and accurate, and the throw is very nice. But I do notice sometimes that certain downshifts, like especially from 5th to 4th, you can kind of get hung up on this like gate over here. And I think that's because it's like got a lazier return spring or something like that. But that can be kind of annoying. That's something I've gotten a little more used to. I was definitely getting hung up on some downshifts when I first got the car. But now I'm a little bit better with it and I know what to expect. Still, I know there's like a spring mod you can do. So once again, these are mostly things that you can tune out or have simple modifications to improve. So I'm not gonna be too hard on the car for that. And to be honest, those are kind of my biggest downfalls I have with this car so far. The stuff that I really enjoy or that I'm surprised by is the fact that this car makes you a better driver. You hear that a lot about with Miatas and any momentum car, but when it has low levels of grip and you can explore the limit of handling at a lower speed, you just become a better driver because you can feel more slip and you're more comfortable with dealing with slip because you're not going super fast. When I had my GT350, that car was a blast for an absolute outright thrill for being very fast and have high levels of grip. But this car has kind of a more fun feeling to it. It obviously doesn't have anywhere near the speed factor as that car, but it's a more innocent level of fun. And you can huck it around and not be too worried about totally breaking the speed limit at insane levels. It makes you a better driver because you're carrying more momentum through the turns, feeling the car move around a little bit under you. So I don't care what level of driver you're at, it's just a car that will make you a better driver. And I've done some endurance road racing and stuff. I'm not the best driver in the world by far, but I'm not some schmuck, and I still learn things when I drive this car. So I absolutely love that about it. Some other pleasant surprises about this car: the infotainment system is on the base car that I have. I thought was kind of cheap or cheesy or whatever, but I actually super love it because it works perfectly. It's got these tactile buttons. I think it's going to age really well compared to the touchscreen that's in like the upper tier models, like the BRZ and some of the later versions of this car. The resolution on those touchscreens is like kind of crappy, so it's not going to age very well. And to be honest, all I need my infotainment system to do is like play Bluetooth audio from my phone, and it does that flawlessly. It works every single time. Guys, I've owned BMWs that have had Bluetooth audio, and like sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't. I've had other cars that do that as well. This car connects every time. So big fan of the very simple audio system. One other thing that I am surprised that I like is the tires. And that may sound weird because everyone knows or claims that they're Prius tires or whatever. Long story short, they're low grip tires, more economy based tires. And I thought it was the dumbest idea ever to put less grippy tires on a car. But in the end, it really does speak to what this car is all about. It's all about fun. And I'm enjoying the car at lower speeds. I can get a little bit of tire slip and kind of dance the rear end around a little bit without fear of going too fast because my levels of grip are too high. And these things break away so progressively. They're just great. And I get like 30 miles to the gallon with them because they're economy tires. So all of these factors, I think, are just some of the outside of the obvious things, right? You guys have seen reviews on this car. It's amazing to drive. The steering is phenomenal. The best steering I've felt, under probably $70,000, $80,000. It's amazing. And it's super balanced. it's super fun. These are things that you already know about this car. So I kind of just wanted to hit you with some stuff that you probably haven't heard of and stuff that you might not notice if you just drove the car for a day or took it on a test drive. This is stuff that I've noticed over 6 months of ownership. So we've talked about the whole driving aspect. Let's pull over. We'll talk about how much it's cost me to drive or own, I should say, and what I've used it for, and has it been good and reliable for me. So let's pull over and talk about that. All right, so awesome little drive in the FRS. Now, what has it been like to own this car from a reliability standpoint, from a cost to run standpoint over those 6 months? Now, this car has 65,000 miles on it, and it's a 2013. So being that it's a first year model year of the car, you would expect quite a few issues, but there have been none. There are a couple TSBs on this car, but I don't really consider them to be very serious in my opinion. There is one for the valve springs, but there haven't been too many failures, and there seems to be more people who have bigger problems having that recall done as opposed to just leaving the car. So for me, this car has been perfect. It really hasn't caused any issues other than I've had to replace the brakes on it, but it had 65,000 miles on the original brakes, so they were about due anyway. So I knew that going into it, and it cost me about $250. And that's another nice aspect of this car, is the fact that the aftermarket parts are plentiful, and the parts are cheap in general. If I were to do these same performance brake pads and rotors on my M3, it would cost at least 3 times as much. So cheap consumables on this car. Of course, the tires are cheap when you're putting like low grip tires on them. So yeah, I mean, it's been great. It gets 30 miles to the gallon, so it's pretty economical too on the fuel economy standpoint. I really have no complaints, and I genuinely do really love this car for a daily driver. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you found this video informative. If you are a prospective buyer of a GT86, or maybe you already own one and you're just curious what other people have to think about them, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching as always. If you want to follow me in between episodes, Eat Sleep Drive TV on Instagram, and I appreciate you guys watching, guys. See ya.